Welcome to our first research lesson for the year. Our first lesson will be an overview of the process that we're going to go through for the next 15 weeks as we work on the research project. Now, this lesson itself will be in two parts because there are a significant amount of notes that you need to take, terms and definitions that you need to understand, so that we can all be kind of on the same page as we get going with this. So we're going to take a break about midway through, and then you can come back at your convenience for part B. So the research process. Although plants in the wild grow without a plan or guidance, a gardener plans the placement of each plant in a garden and helps it grow to its potential. Like a gardener, you can plan your research project and get the best results by using the research process. You can also use a variety of technology tools to help your research project reach its potential. The first step in a research process is to find a topic. If you choose a broad topic, you need to narrow it down to a size that would be appropriate for a research project. So let's look at this example. Our example that we're going to use through this presentation is how stress affects teens' health. So we start out with a broad subject. You see over on the left side of the screen, we start out with a broad subject of teen health issues. We narrow that down to just teen emotional health issues, and then it's narrowed even further to a topic that is a manageable topic for a project, which would be how stress affects teens' health. So you're going to need to do this same thing with your topic. When you choose it, you will need to narrow it to an appropriate size for a project, for research. Once you do that, you're going to determine your purpose and your audience. The purpose of a research project is to inform an audience about a topic. But you shouldn't just present a bunch of facts that you got through research. You need to synthesize the facts or bring them all together with your own experiences and your own knowledge as you write the paper. Then your audience for your research project is anybody or group that you make your research available to. If you can identify characteristics about your audience before you start researching, you can kind of tailor make your approach to your project. Once we find our topic, we get our purpose, and we think through audience, we're going to think about the tone of our paper. And this is something I know you talked about last year. The tone is the attitude that convey to your audience through your writing. And typically for academic reports, you use a formal tone. A formal tone means you talk in third-person point of view. You avoid all personal pronouns, I, me, my. You avoid all pronouns of you and your. You use only third-person point of view. And then you're going to use a more formal language. You avoid slang. You avoid colloquial expressions. Remember, colloquial is the use of everyday language. And you avoid contractions. You can't use words like can't, don't, didn't, shouldn't. Those kind of things you're going to leave out. Then after you've determined your topic, your purpose, your audience, your tone, you're going to sit down and you're going to formulate research questions. And research questions are really critical because they direct what kind of information you're going to go find out for your topic. One strategy, and it's probably the simplest, but we use it a lot because it's effective, and it's called the 5 W's and How method. And it's where you have your research topic, and you're going to think who about your research topic. What, where, when, why, how. And you're going to answer these questions with your research. So it gives you a direction that you go to find your information before you even start. So it's kind of important that you formulate really superb research questions. Let's look at this example in the topic of stress and teen health. What are some sources of stress for teens? How does stress affect teens' body? How do poor coping skills aggravate stress in teens? What dangerous behaviors can teen stress lead to? How can parents help their children identify and deal with stress? And what strategies can teens use to deal with their own stress? So here we have our who, what, when, why, where, and how questions. We'll help this person doing this research project go now and do research to answer these particular questions. So once you have got your questions formulated, then you start to look for sources that will answer those questions. And there's two main categories, and I like to call these kind of the umbrella categories because there are big topics, and underneath we have lots of different things that fit. But first we have our primary sources. A primary source is a first-hand original information, such as a letter, a journal, an historical document, a work of literature or art, an autobiography, an interview with someone who has personal experience with your research topic. Primary. Then we have secondary, which is information based on or about a primary source, or even other secondary sources. Examples could be newspaper articles, magazine articles, e-zines, which are online magazines, encyclopedia entries, documentaries, biographies. These are all secondary sources. But when we look at our sources of information, we have to consider something else. There's a lot else that you consider. But one that we need to consider when we're looking for sources is that we make sure from the get-go, from the very beginning, that we're looking for reliable sources. And we follow the idea of the 4 R's to help us remember what kind of sources we need. First, we need relevant sources. You have to make sure that you're sticking to the topic. So you make sure your source information relates directly to your topic. It's not going off in left field somewhere. You stay really focused and you stay on your topic. It's relevant. Then you make sure it's reliable. You want to get sources written or presented by people who know what they're talking about. You don't want to get people that are just stating their opinion. You want experts. So you're going to explore authors who are quoted frequently or who appear in most bibliographies on your topic. Then you want something that is recent, with all information with the exception of your primary source, which happens at the time of the event or whatever you're writing about. But you're going to look for the most recent works on your topic. You want the most up-to-date information. So you want relevant, you want reliable, you want recent, and you want representative. You need to represent all sides of the issue. And this is especially important if you're presenting or researching a topic that has controversial ideas or people who have opinions strongly in one camp or the other. Political issues, environmental issues, ethical issues. You want to make sure that you get both the pros and the cons represented in your research. So your 4 R's are relevant, reliable, recent, and representative. So as we continue with our sources, looking just for sources before we start actually digging in and looking at our topic, the other 2 things that we need to consider are a variety of sources within our primary and secondary umbrella. And they are print sources, anything like a book, a scholarly journal, a newspaper, a magazine, or digital sources such as online databases, online museums or websites. Okay, so we have primary and secondary sources, but within those we have print sources and we have digital sources. So let's look at our tech tip here. One tech tip is an online database. An online database are places where data or information are stored. And they can be huge collections, they can be particular to one field of study, or they could be all-inclusive with all kinds of studies. Like when we get into this, we're going to talk about the National Archives, which are all primary sources. It's excellent library source. And these are tremendous when you begin your research in any topic, whether it's English, whether it's science, whether it's mathematics, if you had to do something for mathematics, or even in history. You have all of these databases. And one example would be ProQuest, is an example of online database, and it provides access to research in numerous fields. The ones that we have attached to our school website, they have one called ABC Clio World Geography, and it's a database of geographical, political, social, economical, and cultural information from around the world. Then they also have Gale Virtual Reference Library, which is a whole bunch of encyclopedias, almanacs, and other specialized sources. And then they have Digital Encyclopedia Britannica that you can access from our own Edison website library. And the passwords are right on there. We have a date scheduled later in the semester to meet with a librarian so that she can go through what is offered in our library, what's offered in the district, and what's offered in our public libraries. And I know at that time she's going to ask you to get a public library card, so you might want to consider doing that, because there is a wealth of information that you could have just right at your fingertips. And it's good, reliable, solid information. So maybe you'll want to consider that before we go to the library later this month. So it's at this point that we're going to finish our first half of our discussion on the overview of the research process. Remember, we've talked about the need to find a good topic and to narrow that topic down to an appropriate size. We've talked about determining your purpose for writing, determining your audience, who you're writing for, determining the tone that you are going to write with, and how to find sources. You have your primary, you have your secondary, you have your digital, you have your print. And then the 4 R's of sources that you need to consider at the very beginning. You need relevant sources, you need reliable sources, you need recent sources, and you need representative sources. Okay? So, see you in Part B of this lesson.